To continue tonight what I started yesterday regarding ponds filtered by my filters, Epic or Eric, around the world. I thought I'd go into greater detail to show you, hoping it will give you all some ideas of the kind of pond you need. I'm going to start with this one, which is rather a funny one and pretty difficult for us Westerners to understand. This is a pond in Malaysia. I built the first pond for another pond for one guy, and this guy turned out to be a friend of the other guy. His main job was building shopping malls. So he had all the equipment and all the labour that one needed to put in a pond like this. He was also governed by his feng shui guru. I'm sorry, I don't understand. So, but anyway, the first pond he built, this is the second pond. You'll see it has a roof over it to provide ample shade, because air temperatures over there can be crazy. Anyway, when he completed the first pond to perfection, like this one, he called upon his feng shui guru and showed him it, and the guru said, no, you have built it in front of your house, and every time you pass between the pond and your house every day, the money you have earned will all fall into the pond. And the owner said, oh, well, if that's the case, I'll fill it all in and leave it. And the feng shui guy said, no, just move it 75 yards to the right. So he did, and that's what you're looking at right now. Moving on. I showed you this one yesterday, but this is a perfectly circular pond that's in the courtyard of a stately home. The owner said to us that he'd found this this fountain on his land when he bought the house, and he'd like to incorporate it into the pond. Now, bearing in mind, the pond sticks out of the ground like all ornamental ponds did back in those Victorian times in garden ponds. But the depth of the pond below the surface was about 8 feet deep. And then, on top of asking us to place the fountain, so the base of it touched the surface water, he then said he didn't want to see people to see the filters. So he gave us a spot some 25 yards away to the left here. And, well, we had to come up with solutions. Excuse me. Now, a circular pond really should only have one bottom drain. But I simply bought or had made to order a bottom drain with 3 4-inch outlets, and then increased the 4-inch outlets with elbows to supply water to the filter systems. We got around the distance from the pond, which you see here, to the filter systems, which are on the bottom right, by laying lines of PVC pressure pipe work and afterwards encasing them in concrete, and to finish them off, we landscaped them with topsoil. That did work superbly. As to the fountain, we bought solid lengths of 3-inch stainless steel tube. And sat the filter on top of them on a steel plate. Thankfully, this also worked. I'm moving along now randomly. This filter here is probably the neatest assembly I've seen with one of my filters. It's pretty similar to the Epic Compact Plus filter that I sell today, but this model's no longer produced, but the owner swears by it. It's an elongated Epic filter, which is narrower and shallower than the original. And I still hold this to be one of the finest and neatest installations I've seen. Continuing. This pond was hardly finished when I first got photos of it, but you can see the filter systems on the left there. From memory, I think it holds about 12,000 gallons of water. It's a totally in-ground pond, and it's owned by a guy called Hervé Duvert in France. This is a half in and half out of the ground pond. Again, when I visited it, there was a lot of garden work still to be done, so the owner had not put any koi in it as at the time I arrived. This one's quite interesting. It's owned by a French school teacher. It's totally in ground, as you can see. And before he moved to my filters, the pond has 4 bottom drains, incidentally. And he saw the sense in my teaching of 1 bottom drain to 1 filter to 1 pump. Thankfully, it's worked for him. Again, this is another pond in Malaysia. It's again, you see the roof of the pond is there to supply shade, and it's owned by a doctor friend of mine called Louis Lay, who visits Japan to buy his own koi at the right time of the year. This one shows Lewis installing my filters whilst he was building the pond. They are gravity-fed filters, of course. This is a finished view of Lewis's pond, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. Moving on now to a pond in the Philippines that's owned by an enthusiast. When I visited the pond, it was almost in its final stages. But since then, I've seen it, and it's looking absolutely beautiful. The filters are situated to the left-hand side there. And of course, you'll see a roof over the pond, because air temperatures there are pretty hot. This is a display pond owned by Koi Hob in Manila in the Philippines. Again, it has a roof over it, if you see by these stanchions here. It's quite a large pond. I can't remember exactly how big it is, but I reckon it's about 10,000 gallons. I always marveled about this pond. It's in Singapore. It's quite a tiny pond, really. the owner works in I think it's something to do with the Navy or something, but he lives high above the pond, and I often wonder if he feeds the koi by dropping pellets through his apartment window. I've never been sure of that. Moving on. Oh yeah. This is a filter I designed and produced in 1986, and it was the forerunner of my Eric filters and later my Epic filters. This filter is running away on a small pond that's very near to my house. It's only about 50-60 yards away, and the owner has been using this for some around about 12-13 years. It was the last one I had when I closed the business, and strongly suggested he should buy it. Moving on to more modern days. This is a clear Epic filter that's owned by my good friend Glenn Mumford. I think he's been using this for 3 years now. When Glenn contacted me, he was frustrated with having tried all other filters and realized that they were not what he expected of them. So he sold his drum filter, and with the money he received for it, he bought one of my clear Epic filters. By the way, this is a shot of Glenn's pond water at the moment, and I have to admit it looks quite superb. Here is an Eric filter we installed some years ago for a customer, and although the pond that the customer owns has no bottom drains, he insisted on us feeding it by gravity rather than have it standing above the beautiful wall. And I had to agree at the time, because the pond he has is so beautiful when you look out at it from the house. And the last thing he wanted was a filter sitting above it. So we installed this by drilling a 4-inch hole through the existing pond wall and supplying water to the filter by gravity. And this has worked superbly. However, to get to be able to install our filter, we had to remove all this. Hopefully, the owner managed to sell it. I think that's about it, but I hope. Here's a nice design. Looks a bit like the shape of a guitar. It's in ground and out of the ground. It has a bottom drain here and another bottom drain there. The owner initially had Nexus filters to produce the results they wanted, and the guy who installed them in Spain said he insisted he would come out once a month to service the filters. Now, I don't know what they charge to do this, but the water constantly remained to be cloudy, so much so they couldn't see the koi that were in the pond. And it only took one night after installing 2 Eric filters that the pond went to be crystal clear once more. There's a final thing I wish to point out, and that is that this is fingers crossed here, but I don't think I have to cross my fingers. But there's a guy who lives near Bristol. He has a pond that holds 55,000 gallons of water. It's a fish pond. And he's been struggling to get it clear for several years. He has now had the sense to install 2 Epic filters on the pond, and also shut down his bead filters. And okay, after 7 years of waste build-up in the pond, it's dusty and you can't see koi clearly. But I have a feeling that soon the pond will become crystal clear. Anyway, whatever. Thank you for watching.